Alright, well, here we are. Obviously the video is about Midjourney. I know there's lots and lots of videos out there, tutorials and whatnot, showcases on Midjourney. I didn't really feel like I needed to make one as well, but since in our tech tips video we have, 3 or 4 chat GPT videos, a few other AI based videos, Philosophy Corner as well. We've discussed the philosophy side of all this as well. But I thought that I would make a Midjourney video because not only am I having, as a creative type individual, not only am I having a lot of fun with this tool, but it's doing some stuff kind of like ChatGPT that, man, sometimes it's got me thinking like, I know it's only simulating that it's intelligent or that it's, you know, doing all the motions that sort of implies intelligence. But I think more than anything, it's just generating results that tug at our heartstrings. And I think that what's going on here, more so than what the machine's doing, is there's something going on inside of us, in our minds and our souls and our hearts. It's triggering something. And I think that's where the illusion of intelligence kind of comes into play. Let me try to show you what I'm talking about here. So first of all, I've only been using this tool for about a week. For anybody that's not familiar with Midjourney, just Google it. Put it in your favorite search engine. I'm not trying to use Google as a verb anymore, but sometimes it still comes out. Look it up, do your research. There's lots and lots of videos, even here on YouTube, that you can find if you want to know more about it. Essentially, it's an AI image generating program. It's an AI for creating imagery, mostly, that's AI assisted. Now, as you can see here with the stormtrooper helmet on the pike, it took me a lot. If we back up a little bit here, getting it to do exactly what you want it to do is a lot harder than it might seem. Now, just like ChatGPT, this all comes down to the prompts that you're using, and you can train it, and you can look up other prompts online, databases of all kinds of different prompts that will help you, and that'll kind of refine your process as you go. But as you can see, as we're backing up in time here, my concept originally was I wanted a t-shirt, and this is an idea, don't steal my idea, YouTube, an idea of having a stormtrooper head, which in this case it's just a helmet, because we don't want to imply that there's any violence there, because Star Wars never has any violence in it, ever, right? So I wanted a t-shirt of a stormtrooper's helmet on a pike. And the way I envisioned it in my mind, being the anarchist that I am, I'm sure you can draw your own conclusions of why I want this t-shirt. But basically, I envisioned a pike, or probably like 2 or 3 of them, stuck in the ground with the stormtrooper's head or helmet sticking on the top of it with the spearhead kind of poking through it. And you can imagine 2 or 3 of those sort of layered on top of each other outside of, one of those desert worlds that are so well known in Star Wars, outside of a little cantina or something like that. Basically making the statement that we don't tolerate the Empire here. Any stormtroopers, any members of the Empire Corporation are not welcome, and you will find your head on a pike if you come around. That's sort of what the t-shirt would imply. Now, conveying that to an idea that then an AI will generate in cyberspace and then make a picture for you, not easy. It might seem intuitive, but when you go to actually flesh out the idea with the AI, you find that it's a little bit more challenging than you first anticipated. So a lot of it, again, is your prompt, it's your wording, it's the different codes that you use or whatever. Like, we'll talk a little bit about this AR 16:9 and what all that means. Again, I'm not an expert, I'm still learning this tool here, but there's some really cool things that popped up further down in the thread here that I want to go over with you. So first of all, just continuing the idea here of, getting it to do what you wanted it to do, I just typed in, my first try was a t-shirt with a picture of a stormtrooper's head on a pike. And first of all, I misspelled pike. That's the fish, and that's what it did here. It gave me a pike fish mixed in with a stormtrooper helmet on a t-shirt, which it did that part just fine. If that's what I wanted, if I wanted a stormtrooper helmet blended with a fish, hey, it actually did a pretty good job. So the first stab at it, I think it actually did quite well, because the errors here, the lack of results that I got were from my input. So here I tried to refine it a little bit. A t-shirt with a picture of a stormtrooper's head on a pike with a Y. Now, it still was a little confused here, I think, because it only gave me one picture on a t-shirt now, so it kind of dropped that idea. And there's no spear that I can see on these other stormtroopers. They look really cool, and I like the cracks running through them and stuff. One of them's got blood coming out of it, which is kind of cool. That implies violence. For some reason, just like ChatGPT, it'll do things sometimes, and then other times it'll say, nope, sorry, our moderators have identified that that's unacceptable or goes against our terms or whatever. But at other times it'll do it no problem. So that's just classic inconsistency. But then I was trying to further refine my idea here, my prompt. So a hand-drawn sketch now, which is what my original vision was, of a pike or a spear stuck in the ground. And I don't think you should be giving it choices here. I think this was a mistake. I should either pick pike or spear, but not give it a choice between the two. You should be probably as specific as possible with your request. And then the stormtrooper's head on top of it, with the spear or pike running through it. Right? Too many details there. Not clear enough. Not that too many details. Too many vague details. Not clear enough on what I wanted it to do. It really needs to be straight to the point and direct. Now, it again generated some pretty cool imagery here. Got some hand-drawn sketches of something that could be right out of the Mandalorian series on the storyboard or something like that. These are pretty cool, but not what I wanted. But still, sometimes as you're going through this, the practice is refining your own idea with the AI. So again, just like I said early on with ChatGPT, there's no threat here. If you're a creative type like I am, there's no threat here to you. This is an amazing tool that could be so useful on so many different applications. Now, I'm late to the party here. I just discovered Midjourney about a month ago. I've been researching it and watching videos and reading articles and blogs of people that have been using it, looking at different examples, looking at people's galleries that they've made, which is pretty amazing. I'd like to showcase my gallery at some point once I get a bit of a more developed collection, we'll say. But man, I was super pumped when I heard about this. Because, again, just like ChatGPT, if you had told me when I was a kid that this stuff was coming, and when I would be an old man in my 40s, this stuff would be a reality, right? We don't have our hoverboards yet, but we've got robots that help us make imagery. That's pretty freaking cool. So I'm just as pumped now as I would have been as a child to do this kind of stuff. So right away, there's no threat here. Okay, I don't want to belabor the point, but use it to make yourself even more creative than you were before, because now the limitation is not so much in your execution. You can have the AI execute for you. Now it's a matter of how good, how highly polished of an idea can you come up with, and how well can you work, right? Which is going to be work with the AI. It's going to be a whole career of the future. I forget what they call them, AI tenders or something like that. People who basically, AI whisperers, who basically work with the AI to generate results, to optimize the execution with the machine. So our role is not necessarily going away as the creative in all this. It's just sort of transferring to another area. It's being a bit more refined in some regards. Now, speaking of being refined, I tried to get it. I changed my approach here, as you can see. I wasn't getting what I wanted, so now I completely changed my approach. A spear piercing through a stormtrooper's helmet. Now I'm starting to get what I wanted, because I was more direct in the prompt. Simple instructions is what it will respond best to. reference images as well, as we'll see here in a moment. Now I started getting a little too complex here again. A picture of a spear that's been stuck in the ground and blah, 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 blah. And it didn't give me, the last one was better than this, even though it incorporated the ground and all that. And then I tried again, this time with a reference image, which is basically a stormtrooper helmet, like a mask you buy from Walmart. A picture of that with, or no, I'm sorry, this is actually, yeah, so this was just like a cartoon picture, or it might have been even a toy of a head on a little spear, and replace the head with a stormtrooper's helmet. Didn't work, obviously. Getting closer though, getting closer. Tried again, another reference image, two reference images actually. I was trying to see if it would blend the two together. That's when I got that Walmart helmet thing. And then I finally got what I was looking for, pretty darn close anyway. Reference image of the Walmart helmet, the Stormtrooper helmet, with a spear piercing through it. And again, very simple. And another thing that I factored in here, we might as well talk about this now. Another thing I factored in was the resolution. So the aspect ratio here is set to 2:5. So in other words, 2 wide, 5 high. 2 parts wide, 5 parts high. Now you can do 16:9. You can do 1:1 if you want to square. Whatever you want to do, it's really up to you. But you have to give your picture room to generate. So that's one thing that I was doing wrong here, is I was either selecting 16:9 or square. I wasn't specifying anything, which makes a square picture. There's no room in there to fit everything that I need. It would have to zoom it out so much that what I wanted, the content I wanted, would be this big on this. You know what I mean? So instead, give it the canvas that you want for it to create, for that it can generate that image within the canvas. So by specifying AR 2:5, I think I was able to give it a sufficient amount of room to process my request. Now I don't know what's going on in picture number 1 here. I think I got a little confused, but the other 3 are great. This one here, these 2 actually, I find it's a bit strange how the spear is piercing kind of like the front of the helmet in a weird way. It would make more sense if it was coming out right out of the top in the middle. But this one here was pretty darn close to what I wanted. Now, being that it's a helmet, there's not going to be any blood and gore here. But I think with the right words, with the right tweaks, and the right prompting, you probably could get it to generate that. Now, I had it add a variation of a desert background here. Not quite what I was going for. I tried to have it appear in front of a building. That didn't work. And then I thought, this one here is close enough. I tried to switch it then to a wooden spear, and it just kind of generated the same thing. So then I figured, okay, pretty much got as close as I'm going to get for now, unless I want to, spend another hour finessing the prompt. This is pretty darn close to what I was going for, and there's an upscaled version of the final product. Pretty cool, right? You can see that if I further refined it and got it closer to my original idea, you could see that on a t-shirt already. So that's to kind of talk about, generating your ideas and getting Midjourney to play nice with what you want it to do. Now, here's where it gets starts to go more on the philosophical side. And I started to think, well, from all the videos I've watched, there's an unlimited amount of potential when it comes to styles. Now, we'll have to talk about a few different things here. Now, when I talk about styles, I'm talking about artistic styles. When we talk about this right here, this is stylization. This is a little bit different. This is, how could I explain? This is sort of how much liberty, how much artistic freedom you're willing to give Midjourney to accomplish the request that you've given it. So, for example, if I don't set this to anything, if I set the stylized to nothing, or if I don't put stylized like --s anything, it'll be S50 or whatever you set in your settings. If you type /settings, you'll see the stylized there. You can have it high, medium, low. I think the lowest, or the lowest I'm pretty sure is 50. Could go lower than that, I'm not sure. That's kind of the standard that I use as my base. And then I'll go up to 300. I don't know that you can or would want to go higher than that. I guess there's situations and circumstances for everything, but I find 50 to 300 a comfortable range for me. 300 will often be so creative that it's like pretty far away from what I wanted it to do. Or sometimes it'll generate results that surprise me, and I'm like, I almost changed my idea a little bit of what I wanted it to do because it's kind of gone outside the box, right, of creativity, and kind of like what it did. So, but that's more the exception to the rule. Usually 50 to 200, let's say, is a comfortable range. 50 being as close probably to the idea that you wanted as possible. Then that's stylizing. Okay, that's a different thing than using a certain style. Now, a certain artistic style, we could be talking about oil paintings, as you see here. Okay, now this is a reference image of me sitting on the steps here with a brick background, sunglasses on, jean jacket, t-shirt, beard, and this is what it generated based on that reference image with an oil painting style, and also in the style of Johannes Vermeer, who is a famous painter. You can look that up as a reference if you want to see what kind of stuff he's painted. But this one at the bottom right is kind of funny because it's reminiscent of one of his more famous paintings of the lady who's kind of turning the other way with a similar scarf on her head. That one made me laugh anyway. None of them really look like me. Maybe in another dimension, in another timeline. But and this chick who showed up with me to my right, I'm not sure who she is. Apparently we've blended together in the fourth picture on the bottom right here, but how funny is that, you know? But the style of the painter and the fact that it's painted in an oil painting, with even an oil painting in the bottom right picture here, an actual oil painting on the wall behind, like, that's pretty freaking cool. I love this stuff. Now, that's not what I was going for at all, but I still upscaled this one because I like it. I think that one looks cool. It's almost like they were just having a discussion on what he's painting, like almost like a critique. Like she's very concerned that he's not following his heart. This is what I'm getting from it. It's almost like she's critiquing his inability to draw and to paint authentically. And he's like trying to factor that in whilst also giving the camera a little look to say, like, yeah, you're in on this right now and you probably shouldn't be. Something like that. Anyway, that's my interpretation of this AI generated. Now we get into some pretty weird stuff here. I don't know what happened or what it did, why it wants to give me long, flowing, beautiful hair. Again, maybe in another lifetime, but that's not happening in this timeline. But the only difference here is that I changed the artist, so in the style of Sandro Botticelli instead. And this is what it made. And I increased the stylize to 75, so ever so slightly from 50 to 75. So only 25, and this is what it did. It took its artistic freedom up a notch, as you can see. And these are pretty good. Nothing that I would save in my archive. This one here with the glasses, I don't know what the heck's going on there. This one at the bottom right, I swear I've seen that guy before. I think I know that guy, and he's not me. But here's another shot at it. The one at the top left I actually quite like, and I think it does kind of look like me. So this time I didn't specify any artist, but I did keep the oil painting style, this time in a 16 by 9, and then I went back to stylized 50, and this is what it came up with. Now the one at the top right, I actually quite like that one, and I upscaled it. The other ones are kind of weird, but this one looks pretty cool. I wish I could grow that kind of hair. This guy is like another version of myself. Now I just noticed that there is, almost looks like a watermark running through it. I never noticed that before. Huh. There seems to be some kind of watermark there. Wonder if it's on the other ones. It is. What's up with that? Only 2 of them have that watermark that I can see. Strange. I didn't notice that the first time. Let's upscale another one here, and just to see if we upscaled number 4. I want to see if no watermark. Sorry, the backlighting here is a little bright, so I can't see. Yeah, and that's almost too symmetrical. That face looks strange. That is not me. But yeah, no watermark on that one, which is kind of weird. So if I scroll back up without spoiling the other stuff that we're going to cover here in a second. I'm just playing around here at this point just to see what it can come up with, but it generated something somewhat surprising that I kind of liked and saved in my archive. Now, here I'm experimenting, instead of oil painting, let's try 35mm camera with ultra photo real. This is a style that I use all the time now, and it does some pretty cool stuff. It makes things look ultra photo real that you wouldn't think would look good that way. But some things, especially fantasy-based things, when you make them photo real, they almost come to life a little bit. It's pretty interesting. Now, look at what it did here in this first one. I think because I put, well, first of all, my reference image, same reference image that I've been using, with 35mm, it assumed on the first one that I was talking about the lens and included the lens itself in the picture, with me kind of examining it from the back, which is quite artistic, and I actually like that first one a lot. And I love the green tint on the lens. It's like, what is this lens? What is this thing? And why is he so intent on just studying it when it's not even attached to the camera? Like, what's going on here? One of those pictures where you kind of scratch your head to try and understand why you like it, but you just know that you do. It's just unusual, and it's cool to look at. These two on the right, I don't know what the heck. I don't know what the heck it's trying to do. It's kind of like those other pictures that we were looking at with the long flowing hair. I don't know. That's not close to what I wanted. The one at the bottom left, sure. It just kind of pulled this background out of nowhere. It sort of did what it did with the long flowing hair pictures, but in the background instead. It gave long flowing moss in the background, you know? And each of these, what did I set the stylize as? See, only 50. Imagine if I had set it to 300, what kind of stuff it would have done. But anyway, I upscaled these two because I kind of liked them. And then look at that one, you know? And again, no watermark, so I don't know why some of them do that. It's very strange. I'll have to look into that. But maybe, or wait, maybe because there's a watermark on, no, there wouldn't be a watermark on the reference picture. I don't know. Anyway, we'll figure that one out and update some other time. This one turned out pretty cool too. I think I look a little pale and creepy there, but I like that it kind of just stuck me in this random image. It just made a judgment call to put me in this fantastic place. Now, here is where we get into some really cool stuff. I love abstract art. I love surrealistic art. I love things that kind of put you in another dimension, Fantasyland. I love that stuff because I think it's as close to dream world as we're going to ever get. You know, that's what art kind of does. It takes us to dreamland. You know, and meditating, of course, can take us there. But it's so cool to have a physical, tangible, printable picture like this that you can then hold or put on your wall, and it's like having a freeze frame of a dream on your wall. You know, like how cool is that? So here my prompt was a small man trapped in an hourglass, and truth be told, it didn't do a great job at all this, but again, I was being too elaborate with my prompt here. I should have been more specific and direct. But anyway, a small man trapped in an hourglass, banging on the side, which it didn't do, trying to get out, which it didn't do, as sand falls on top of him, which it didn't really do, in a surrealistic style, which it absolutely did, abstract, yes, extreme detail, which it did, cascade, this was kind of a random word that I threw in, and I was going to put in another random word, and I thought, nope, you've already put in enough. Regular stylization here with a 16:9 aspect ratio, and this is what I came up with, which the two on the left I adore, the two on the right, so-so. I don't see a little man inside the hourglass. I think the people are outside. There's two people in the background of this, and they're outside of the hourglass. The one at the bottom right, it's very confusing. I don't know what's going on. It almost looks like the one inside the hourglass is like vacuuming the sand, and the other one's vacuuming the outside of the sand. I don't know what's going on with those two. I don't really like them, to be honest. The one at the top right is really cool. It's not really what I wanted, but that's something I could totally see as like a background wallpaper on somebody's desktop or something. And then the one at the bottom right is the one that I upscaled, or I upscaled this one too, just because it looks really cool. And this one here was just fantastic. Now, that's probably 70 to 80% of my request captured here. It's not, the little man is not trying to get out like I wanted, but it is abstract and it is surrealistic, and it's so abstract and so surreal and so kind of random and all thrown in together, and it's doing this thing with the stairs, and it's almost like the pieces of wood that would make up the hourglass are now part of this sand dune, and the part of the hourglass that would normally be made of wood is made of sand, and it's all funneling down and tornadoing at the bottom of this little this crystal ball. Like, it's just so cool, and I don't know how it came up with this, but I like it. That's what I mean. Sometimes it doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you need, I guess, right? A lot of these things, depending on the task that you want, that you're trying to accomplish, it may or may not serve your purpose. You know, if I'm making a video and I needed this specific imagery and it gave me this, it might be a stretch to use that in my video. But at the same time, I could almost, because this image is so cool, I could almost change the script to better match this. I mean, it's situational, and obviously we want it to be as close to our request as possible. But sometimes if you have that flexibility available there in your project, it'll generate some pretty cool stuff. Now here's where I push the envelope. And you know me, I like to push the boundaries of what we can do with this stuff. Check this out. I haven't even looked at all these yet. I hadn't even finished generating them when I started making the video. The idea dawned on me, and then within minutes, maybe even seconds, I'm like generating a whole bunch of them at a time. They're all queued up, and I'm like, I gotta make a video about this. So some of this stuff is still gonna be new for me and fresh. So you're gonna get my genuine reaction right off the bat. So what prompted this, no pun intended, what prompted this within my mind was, okay, now we've determined that it does a fairly darn good job, I would say, of these sort of artistic depictions. What can it do? What does it know about human emotion? And how does it convey that into an artistic image in the surrealist style on top of that? Because it is one of my favorite styles. I had it generated in a 16:9 aspect ratio because I figured that would give us a lot of room for it to generate whatever it wants to do. And then I kept this stylized as low as possible because I want to see the parallel between what we know, right? Everybody knows depression. Everybody knows anxiety. Whether you have a problem with these things or not, at some point in your life you felt depressed. At some point in your life you probably felt anxious. You felt love or whatever, anger, whatever other emotion you want to attribute to this. Everybody's felt those things, right? It's not speaking to the mental health side of it. But what does it know about the way we feel inside, internally, with these emotions? How do our artists express those feelings? And then how does it reconcile those two to then come up with its own version of what it thinks is going on in these two other worlds? Does that make sense? Hope I'm explaining that right. But I feel like there's three piles here. There's the first pile of the raw emotion, right? The depression. You feel like that tightness, that darkness, that sheer pessimism, that self-destructive nature almost of the depression, like that part that like it's black, it eats away at you. That raw emotion, that's pile number one. Now, pile number two is the artistic depiction of that. It's the expression of the artist trying to get that malignant cancer out, that spiritual corruption out of their system. And how do they do that? They sing, they dance, they paint, they sculpt, they express, they write, right? This is what art is. It's the output, right? If the raw emotion is almost the input, then the art would be the output, right? And I think there's a third pile here, which is the interpretation of all this, which is another component to the art, which is when I look at this, what does it make me feel? Does it make me feel, does it go full circle now back to the raw emotion? I think that's the trifecta there, the triangle that connects these things together, right? The raw emotion, the expression, and then the interpretation. And does the interpretation come close, or are they similar in some ways? Sometimes the interpretation is way different for a lot of people than what the artist originally had inside with that raw emotion. Sometimes they're a perfect match. Sometimes the artist intended for you to kind of get back there. Sometimes the artist had no regard whatsoever for the interpretation, and they're just putting it out there, and then you interpret whatever you want. Sometimes it goes back to the original raw emotion. Sometimes it goes off in some other direction. And that's art. That's the beautiful triangle that is art. Now, in that third pile of interpretation, we now have artificial intelligence that is able to reconcile the first two piles. What do you think of these two things? Can you do that? Let's see. An artistic depiction of depression, surrealistic style with a 16:9 aspect ratio with the stylized pretty low. This is what, in 2023, okay, our artificial intelligence, which this one is called Midjourney, this is what it thinks is human depression. How cool is that, right? Even if it got us halfway there, even if it gave us a little inkling, a little spark that it knew, that it had any idea at all, that would be amazing. But here we have much, much more than that. Here we have actual representations of what I could identify in each one of these pictures as depression. So not only did it execute on its task, it did it well. It did it well. At least on these four pictures, it did a great job. Let's take a quick look at these. The one at the top left, she's obviously not too happy. She looks to have an upset look on her face. At the very least, it's neutral. There's a lot of dark tones there. There is a little bit of light, but it's crowded with all the darkness and the clouds coming in. There's things dangling from the sky. She's in water. It looks like cold water. That's depression, you know? That's depression. That's a form of depression. That's someone's, in this case, an artistic interpretation of an AI, but that's nonetheless someone's artificial or artistic interpretation of depression. Does it take away from the fact that it was well executed if it was done by a machine or it was done by a human? I don't think so. And that's what we're seeing here. Look at the one on the top right. The cloud is like a brain. And then you get the brain stem and the nerves going down from out of there. And it's a dark cloud. You know? Wow. Wow. My mind is blown. You know? And this guy is, again, doesn't look like a happy guy. Seems very isolated and alone in the middle of nowhere in this desert of loneliness. That's depression. He's even sitting on a weird chair where things kind of don't make sense when you're in that depressive state. Being that I suffer from major depression, I can so relate with this. Look at the one at the bottom left. How many interpretations can you come up with for this one? Holy smokes. The umbrella. Talk about symbolism. The umbrella. Trying to shelter, to shield yourself from falling chaos and rain and coldness and wetness, and she's all in black. You know what I mean? And then the balloons of like being detached from reality. And the balloons look like they're filled with smoke or some type of toxic, caustic gas of some kind, some nasty stuff that would make you feel bad. You know, you look at dirty balloons like that, it almost makes you feel bad inside just looking at it. That's depression. So far, 3 out of 3. And then, of course, number 4. Right away, I can feel where the artist is coming from on this one. And the artist is a freaking AI. Look in the background of this one, okay? I gotta upscale this one so we can take a better look at it, okay? I don't want to spoil the next ones that are coming up. I don't want this video to be too long either, but again, I get so excited with these AI videos because I'm just so enthused about this. Look at the background. Look at what looks like a lonely island, an isolated island in the middle of what's already a lonely place, with like almost like a ladder or some type of scaffolding going up to nowhere. That almost represents like you're trying to elevate yourself out of the depression, but just in vain because you know you're not going to get there and you're not going to get anywhere, but you still have to try. And sometimes it's a stairway or a ladder leading to nowhere, and which only makes you feel more depressed. Now, in this case, again, both these faces don't look happy. The one on the left, the lady on the left here with the red dress, she really doesn't look too happy. She almost looks like angry, depressed. Um, and again, I'm getting a sense of loneliness, darkness, pessimism, a dried out tree that hasn't been nourished, hasn't been watered. It's barely clinging to life, or it might already be dead. And that like festering into the brain, that dead, rotten way of thinking that serves no good, you know. And it's almost like there's scavenger birds all around that are picking at nothing. There's nothing there left to pick. It's been picked clean. And she's almost like, I'm getting the sense that the one in red here, which is her, it's probably her on the right. That's her internal mind, perhaps. And she's in the process of trying to meditate her way out of this depression and having a hard time because of these moments of elevation that lead nowhere and having to start over and go back to the drawing board. It seems like she's been here for a little while and she's kind of struggling in vain to get out of it, and she's going to need help. You know, I'm getting all this from a simple, it's not simple, but it's breathtaking is what it is, you know? Let's go back and look at some of these other ones here. These are really, really cool. This one is anxiety. Let's see if we get a sense for anxiety from these. Yeah. Yeah, those first two, top left and top right, especially top right with the pages all over the place, that chaotic mess where the pages are almost turning into birds and they're all flying in different directions. Isn't that what a bout of anxiety kind of feels like, where it's just scattered chaos everywhere and you're kind of struggling to understand what's going on? It almost looks like the one in the top right, like she was reading this book and the book kind of exploded. It's maybe started off with something small and then it bursts into this huge chaotic mess of anxiety. So that one at the top right absolutely represents it. Top left, I would say so as well. Maybe not to the same degree. I'm not sure what that expression is on her face, but if anything, it would be more someone who's trying to get their anxiety in check, in control. But I'm not getting as much of a sense for the emotion in that one. Bottom left, I'm not sure what that expression is, but then again, I'm not the best best person to interpret facial expressions. I think I'm fairly okay at it, but that one, I'm not sure. I mean, it could be anxiety. Somebody else might look at this picture and say, yeah, that for me, that represents anxiety because of this and that. I'm not getting it myself. I would almost put that one in the depression category. It looks like a more of a depressing scene, but you know what it could be is that she's kind of just surrendered to the anxiety, and she understands that it's not something that's going to physically hurt her, and she's kind of just letting go at that point, just giving it up to the heavens, this release. And it almost looks like there's imageries in the clouds of like a squeezing fist. So yeah, that one could very well be anxiety. The one at the bottom right, I don't know about that one. That face to me looks more like disappointment, or like someone's looking down on you almost. It could be social anxiety is what it is. But look at the curly hair and how they almost looks like spaghetti noodles or something. And then everything again is kind of lifting off. It's taking off. It's not grounded. So these all could represent anxiety. I think for me, the one at the top right definitely does a better job of that, and one that I would probably upscale as being, that's the one. That's the one that I want to call anxiety for my gallery. Now let's look at loneliness. Now it should do a pretty good job at this one because loneliness, aside from depression and anxiety, which could encompass loneliness or vice versa, loneliness is, I think, a little bit easier to explain. It's easier to empathize with, again, because it's probably more common than the other two, than depression and anxiety. Because everybody feels a little lonely sometimes. Again, everybody feels depressed sometimes, everybody feels anxious, but I think loneliness is more common and it's more applicable in different situations. So loneliness might be easier to convey to someone else. So the AI may have an easier time understanding what we feel when we say we're lonely. Now, let's start with the top left. Weird tree with two swings, empty swings or something, and this dude's sitting on a floating bench away from the tree. The bottom left also is kind of the same idea. Weird tree, guy standing away from it. These could convey loneliness. I would say the loneliness in those two specifically, the ones on the left, they appear more in the color scheme than the palette. I feel loneliness, but in the visual representations, even though there's a person standing on their own there, that doesn't necessarily convey loneliness to me, because that could be a reflection. That could be someone who's pensive, who just needs to be alone, who wants to be alone, who needs time to think and wants to self-isolate. Or it could be isolation itself is what I'm seeing there, more than loneliness. Now, the two on the right, it's funny that they separated themselves like that, and they're kind of similar. These two on the right, I feel, are similar as well, and those, for me, do a better job at explaining loneliness. This guy in red at the top right, he looks lonely because he's sitting there, even though you can't see his expression, it almost looks bleak. And they do a better job in the surrounding rocks to convey that darkness, that loneliness, that almost fear. It's the fear of loneliness. And the sky is darker, and the trees are dead, and it's a vast emptiness. And there's something off in the distance, but it's almost like that's where he came from and found himself in this lonely place, way far away from everyone else. That's a good one. That's the one I'm going to keep too. But the one at the bottom right also does a good job. I think that the cloud tree here does a fairly good job at bringing down. It's almost like your fear and your loneliness is sometimes something that's immaterial. That's kind of it's all pervading. It's all around, but it's not really tangible, so to speak, and the cloud tree sort of brings that down. It sort of brings it down to reality, to the same level as the guy almost, where it makes it more real. Maybe this one here is him understanding or accepting the fact that he's now in a very lonely place and it's becoming real for him, and maybe it's the first time that he really feels lonely. I'm saying he here because these look like men to me, but it could be a woman. I'm just making assumptions just based on their appearance, but you know, anyway. The one at the bottom right to me looks like a guy who is coming to the stark realization that he's alone in life, maybe because of past decisions. But the colors could do a better job of conveying the emotion. See, the one at the top right, bang on. I don't know what the symbolism is with the red suit. Maybe just the raw life existential part of it. I don't know. The physicality of it, the blood, the passion behind it. But again, for me, it's just because that's what art is. It's mostly subjective. Um, the one at the top right definitely conveys feelings of loneliness. So I'm going to upscale that one. Now we get into hopelessness. That's a heavy one. That is when depression is at its worst, right? There's almost no coming back from it. And that's right away, the top left is that this I get the same feeling that this guy's in, no man's land now, and he's drifting away with those balloons because there's no hope anymore. It's just let go and let yourself get carried away. There is an element of hope here though, which is funny because it's supposed to be a picture about hopelessness, but yet in all of these, I'm seeing beams of light off in the distance, which indicates hope. So unless we can interpret that, the subject is moving away from the light of hope, you know, maybe the one at the top right might be conveying that because they're kind of moving away from the middle. But I still feel some hope in all four of these because there's light there. I think if they were going to really do a good job at conveying hopelessness, there wouldn't be any light. Or if there was light, it might be coming from the moon, or from stars, or from light coming from behind clouds or something, which is what's happening here, but not so much with the sun. I think they could have conveyed that differently with ambient light. And maybe that's what the one at the bottom left is trying to do. I'm not sure. Again, the one at the top right does give me a sense of hopelessness, but with a smidge of hope. So it's not really hopelessness. I guess the one at the top right does a better job, but again, you got light in the middle, which conveys hope. Bottom left is showing, this one does a good job of showing the world sort of lifting up off the ground, becoming detached, becoming separated with reality, with one's world sort of collapsing all around them. Looks like a lonely place. That one might be better suited for loneliness. But the one at the bottom right, I wish he was facing the other way. If he was turned the other way, I would get the sense more like he came from this long journey and he's at the end of it, or maybe even in the middle of it, and just feeling that sense of hopelessness of just never getting there, never being able to get there, and just kind of giving up. So, mixed results on this one, I would say. Now, let's look at one more negative overtone, and then we're going to switch moods a little bit because I realize a lot of these are darker emotions. This one is a heavy one as well, called despair. And anyone who's ever felt despair, maybe you can get a sense of this. Now, these color palettes and this lighting are exactly what I was talking about in the previous one. If I was going to convey hopelessness, these are the colors. This is the color palette that I would use. This is the light, the sort of ambient light that I would introduce. Even though there's some blue in the top left, it's mostly dark. It's very foreboding. It's grim. It's a state of despair. Look at the expression on her face. Look at the way the cloud has holes in it and it's kind of like weaving into her hair. And even her like her silky garment here is like, even that seems like down and depressed, and it's like she stopped caring about herself. The one at the top right is very similar of the last one that we saw, where this guy or girl or woman, whatever, could easily be at the end of a journey and just giving up, which is a state of despair. The one at the bottom left is kind of creepy. Uh, I like that it's out in the middle of a desert on a couch, but what the heck is this thing on the right with the eyeballs? It looks like an octopus or something. I don't know what that is. Maybe that's a manifestation of her despair, and that's kind of what it's become for her. I don't know. I'm not sure how to interpret that one. Love to hear your thoughts on that one if anyone has anything else, because I'm not sure what to make of that. But the bottom one, bottom right, fantastic job of representing despair. You know, almost merging with the surroundings here. This individual has hit such levels of despair that almost like losing complete sense of identity, becoming one with everything around, not in a good way, just fading away, disintegrating. Looks like a very lonely place. Looks like an empty place, a dark place where you wouldn't want to be. Nobody else around. Everything's in ruins. The water doesn't look good. Empty buildings. You know, this is like post-apocalyptic, which would be you'd be in despair living in that world. So that one there, wonderful job. I'd say it's a hard one for me to pick between top left and bottom right. Yeesh. I don't know. I don't know if I can pick between those two. They each do a really good job. Oh, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and blend these two together and see what I get. So I'm not going to upscale either one of those. I'm actually going to take 1 and 4 and blend them together and see what it comes up with. So maybe I'll do an update on that in a future video. But let's get into some more happy feelings, happy emotions here. We'll finish on a high. So this one is the artistic depiction of joy in a surrealistic fashion. I think all of these, right? So the positive emotions are going to be easier for it to identify because we have lots and lots of examples. We have lots of examples of negative emotions as well. And we really shouldn't say positive or negative. All emotions have their purpose. But I think people are more apt to create, I don't know if I can say this, but people are more apt to create when they're in a state of joy or some type of optimism, some type of happiness, whether it's being in love or um, whatever it is. You know, you want to convey that. You want to shout it from the mountains. You know, um, when you're in a state of, for example, despair, you're creating out of a desperate need for expression just to get it out of your system. It's almost like bloodletting. You're just letting the bad blood out just to make room for maybe more positive things. But with the upside of things, it's very easy to represent most of the time for artists. I think each one of these does a good job at encapsulating joy. I think that the one at the bottom left is probably the more artistic one, abstract artistic one. But the other ones are nice as well. These are all pictures I could see, you know, up on somebody's wall to just kind of keep them uplifted. And the elements that represent the joy are very easy to see. They're all hearts and beautiful blue skies and light and birds and butterflies, and you just get a sense of looking at them, like you feel uplifted, you feel joyous just looking at them. I love the details on the one at the bottom left, and I think that's the one I'm going to keep because it's not so, I don't want to say traditional, but you know, the other ones, you know, the one at the bottom left is the more unusual interpretation of joy, which is why I want to keep it. The other ones are more sort of conventional, but all 4 of them do a good job at conveying the emotion. Here's one, and I knew there was going to be a lion or two in here. Here's one of pride, and these all seem to be, except for the one at the top right, from what I can tell, just at a glance, they all seem to be pride, the positive, the more um, a more appreciated version of pride, because pride, as you know, can also be a bad thing. The one at the top left, this lion looks proud in a positive way, in a very lion-esque way. Pride of lions, and this guy clearly is good at his job. He knows what he's doing. He is happy to do his work, and he's proud. He's proud of his pride, probably. So let's go to the one at the bottom, or I'm sorry, at the top right. This one could be both. This could be pride that starts off positive, that becomes negative, that becomes over pride, that becomes a sin, is what I'm getting here, where it seems colorful and positive on the outside, but deep down it's selfish and it's monstrous and it's being fed by this guy on the bike who's just feeding his pride that should be, these clouds in the background almost look like alien ships, UFOs or something. But it's like it should be something positive, but he's turned it into something grotesque. That's like a circus amusement something. It's freakish. Bottom left, again, we're back to the lion theme with hot air balloons. I guess that makes sense. Your pride could get in your head, and you could get a big head about it, and you could be detached from the reality of where the source of that pride or where that pride comes from. I don't know what this beast is behind the lion, but it has two tails, and it is not a lion. It looks like some type of I don't even know, antelope or something with two tails, and then a weird llama in the background. This is almost like confused pride, of maybe like racist pride or something like that, where it doesn't make sense. Like the lion almost looks confused about what he should be proud about. Like, should I really be proud about this? I don't fully understand it. So that's like a confused pride for me. And then the bottom right is like someone who's so proud, maybe of their child, that their head has exploded. They're just a madness of rainbows, and it's spilling over into the kid. That's what I'm getting from this. It's almost like a mother who's way too proud of her kids to the point where she sees no wrong in anything that they do, and it's just imparting itself. Like she's almost the elephant creature here. The mother is almost like falling over, so proud, so enraptured in pride, like about to fall over, and head has exploded, and it's all going into this little beast with the wing ears, and obviously it's going to have a big head after and explode as well. So this one does a good job of showing pride on both sides. I think that you can even, except for the one at the top left, I'm not getting any negative pride on that one. But the other ones, you extrapolate a little bit of the positive pride in that and the negative side of pride from each one of these. So really interesting. Here's one that shows empathy. And right away at the top left, this little alien scene here, um, it's pretty dark. It's pretty dark for something that's supposed to be representing empathy. I think top right does a better job at showing the light of empathy. And these two characters are clearly trying to empathize with each other. They're trying to feel each other's feelings as empaths, as they're trying to get to the heart of the matter, so to speak. The top left looks like a therapy session between, some Freud character and an alien. I don't know what's going on there. This might be, the top left might be more of the textbook definition of empathy versus the top right is the practical side of it, the actual feeling side of empathy, the real world empathy. Really like that top right one. Bottom left again is like a scene out of a therapy session or something. I don't know what's going on here. I don't get the sense that these two characters dressed in black are empathizing with anything, with each other or with something else. That looks more like mourning almost, which is weird. Not a fan of that one. And then bottom right, again, I don't get the sense of empathy here. I mean, they're clearly gazing deeply into each other's eyes. But what are these characters and what do they represent? Why is the one on the left all broken up into pieces? Is that because the one on the right's trying to imagine what it's like to be them? Then why isn't his face broken up into pieces as well? Right? Which is empathy is supposed to be when you know what someone else is feeling because you've been there before, versus sympathy, which is just feeling bad for somebody. I don't know. Not really a big fan of either one of these except for the one at the top right because that's the only one that really, for me, conveys the emotion, the raw emotion of empathy. There should be an element of love there, and I don't get that from any of the other ones except for the top right. You can only be empathetic with someone if you really have at least a little love for them. And then speaking of love, there's our last emotion, love, which, yeah, all four of these easily, right off the bat, you can see elements of love, big elements of love. I love the one at the top right with all these little creatures floating around. They really decided to go abstract on that one more than the other ones, it seems. But, the one at the bottom right, even some of the other ones, you could see this on like a movie cover or the cover of a book. Could be an album cover even, a page in a storybook. These all convey love in different ways. Now, they're conveying the sort of classic love of a man for a woman and a woman for a man. They could probably, all four of them, do a better job of explaining other forms of love, but we probably have to get more specific with that because, again, love is one of the more expressed human emotions. There's lots and lots and lots of references for it to look at. It being Midjourney can look at all sorts of different examples of this, but it's going to find mostly stuff like this, and that's why I think all four of these are represented in such a way. You think of all the romance novel covers that look like this, and all the movies, all the romantic comedy movies, and all the books that are along these themes. That's the majority of what it's going to find when it tries to reference these things. So I think that's why they're coming out like this. But if we were a little bit more specific in what sort of love we were looking for, um, maybe if we had typed platonic love or something like that, it might have given us something different, or unconditional love might have generated something different. But still interesting nonetheless. Of course, there's heart themes in all four of them, I think. Maybe not the top right. I don't see any hearts in that one, but the other ones definitely have heart symbols scattered about. I love how the one at the top left is conveying love without using too many reds and pinks, and because that's the more conventional representation of the color of love. But when we talk about the color of love, it really has no color. And the one at the top left is demonstrating that. They're dressed in very neutral colors. There's this wave of something or other that's surrounding them. Maybe that's the love itself, which is gray, which you would think doesn't fit, but yet it does a perfect job here. And I like how the sun is almost distorted, like time and space is distorted around them when they're in this mode, in love. It's really well done. I like all four of these. The top two are probably my favorites, but there's other elements about the other ones I like as well. The bottom right is it's almost gothic, almost steampunk. I like it for that reason. I like the abstract nature of the top right. But I think if I had to pick one, I would probably go with the top left because of what I mentioned. Not a lot of classic symbolism. There are some hearts in there in the background, and the vines and the twigs and the floaty things. So it is using the symbolism a little bit, but I just love how it's conveying that emotion with these neutral colors. It just goes to show that it doesn't have to be like these other three. It doesn't have to use those colors or those patterns or those schemes. You can convey love in a number of different ways. I think that's what we're seeing here. So that's probably the one that I would pick. And that's it. Now we're back to this stuff that I upscaled from before, which I'm going to finish doing, and then I'll have a nice set of raw human emotions to add to my gallery, which is pretty cool. So that's mainly what I wanted to share for today. Again, Midjourney is a really cool program. You need Discord to use it. If you want a tutorial, there's lots out there. Just do a quick search on YouTube. You'll find all kinds of um, tutorials on this using this tool. It is a paid service, so be prepared to spend, anywhere from whatever it is. I don't remember, $10 to $15 I think is the minimum per month, and it goes up to I think 60. And that will, the higher your package, obviously, the quicker it'll render things for you, and you'll have more options and more stylizations, and you can you can do all this privately if you prefer. Otherwise, it's shared in the public realm, which who cares? But yeah, otherwise, it's a pretty easy program to pick up. Couple tutorials is all you need to learn it, and then you can just start generating stuff. And really, most of the learning, like a lot of things, like most things, happen in just playing around with it. So, but yeah, that is my video on Midjourney. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back, I'm sure, in the future with more Midjourney videos. Once I think of more ideas that we can have it generate and come up with and interpret for us and analyze. I think this was fun. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Kind of a longer video, but we covered a lot of good stuff here on all sides, I think, on the tech side, on the philosophy side, on the spiritual side, on the artistic side. It was kind of a multifaceted video. Hope you agree. Hope you're able to watch the whole thing and get something out of it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you next time.